Today, we're going to be talking about foolproof interview processes for employers of small organizations. This segment is brought to you by America Achieves and the Collective Impact Talent Initiative. America Achieves is a national nonprofit organization that was founded in 2011 to strengthen democracy by building educational bridges to the middle class and reestablishing the link between work and opportunity. In early 2023, America Achieves selected LER Consultants and Advisors and DGW Consulting Group to participate in a philanthropically funded national talent pipeline pilot project known as the Collective Impact Talent Initiative. The Collective Impact Talent Initiative builds upon America Achieves' work with equity centered economic growth and workforce regional coalitions through the Commerce Department's Build Back Better Challenge and the Good Jobs Challenge, both of which were part of the Biden administration's America Rescue Plan. The Collective Impact Talent Initiative provides inclusive, place based regional coalitions from across the country, from places like upstate New York and Central Valley, California, to Virginia and Texas, among others, with individualized and capacity building support to source, recruit, hire the key diverse talent needed to drive the regional coalition's initiative and bold visions of equity centered economic growth and workforce development. The Collective Impact Talent Initiative is grounded in the belief that coalitions and their work are only as good as their teams and people. That brings us to LER Consultants and Advisors, which was founded by myself, Leslie Esters Redwine, and we've provided executive search and talent development services, including interim executive support and executive coaching to a myriad of organizations across the country. I happen to be based in Michigan. I'm an attorney and I've served as an executive leader for over 20 years. I earned my BA from the University of Michigan, JD from the University of Detroit Mercy School of Law, Detroit Mercy Law, and my master's in public administration from Baruch Marx School of Public and International Affairs. My colleague who's been working with me on this project is Deronda Williams, and she has provided an array of talent and search services starting in 2012, focusing on C-level finance operation roles for an array of organizations in the education, racial, social justice, and philanthropic sectors. Deronda is based in Nevada and has over 20 years of executive experience across multiple industries. Deronda received her Bachelor's of Science in Industrial Engineering from Northwestern University and also has an MBA in Finance from the University of Chicago Booth School of Business. As consulting partners on this project, LER Consultants and Advisors and DGW Consulting Group, we work with a number of regional coalitions to support their talent strategy, including providing thought partnership on recruitment and hiring processes and developing robust pipelines of high caliber, diverse talents to fill key roles. In addition, LER and DWG Consulting Group bolster and Agility Consulting also partnered with America Achieves on this initiative. You can learn more about the Collective Impact Talent Initiative by going to catalyzeblog.americaachieves.org/talent_initiative or simply emailing catalyze@americaachieves.org. In this series, we are so excited to share some key insights and actionable tips on how to source, recruit, hire, and retain diverse talents for your organization and coalition. So without further ado, let's hear a little bit more about foolproof interview processes for employers of small organizations.
The last segment, we had a chance to talk about what were some of the things in the job description. So you're ready to kick off your search. You put together your job description. You then are ready to then come up with the interview process. Where should I begin if I'm an employer?
That's a great question. So once you start getting candidates, you want to do some pre-screening before interview day. You want to do a resume screen and make sure that the candidate's experience is aligned with what you've outlined in the job description. You want to do a preliminary screen for culture fit and a screen against the competencies that are outlined in that job description. And one of the things that I know Leslie and I both do as a best practice is do an early connection with the candidates who look promising and the hiring manager. This is just another opportunity to have that hiring manager have early access to the candidate, to again screen for culture fit and competency alignment. It also gives the candidate an opportunity to get to know the hiring manager and to make sure there's chemistry there, to make sure that they're a team that could work together. So those are some of the things that I include in my process when I'm working with clients, just to ensure success before we even get to interview day.
Yeah, I can't stress how much that is such a vital component of the interview process, particularly during COVID. I got involved with a number of job searches, and we would find that people would just not show up, or there would be just no chemistry between the employer and the candidate. And so moving forward, I've just added that get to know you conversation or coffee chat right up front, so that even though the usually in the job process you meet the hiring manager at the end, this one actually flips it, and really you get that upfront conversation. So I would say if you're a hiring manager and you want your team to interview the candidates, that's fine. But really being able to move that one meeting up front and give about 30 to 45 minutes, I think it really will just set the course right. And you will know right up front, whether or not you want to really investigate more and learn more about that candidate. And so once we've done that part of the process, that get to know you conversation, and a green light is given from the employer, like, let's go on, I want to know more about this candidate, what should happen next, Rhonda?
Yeah, so what I do is I work with clients to develop a very structured interview process. It's critical in terms of ensuring that all candidates are evaluated the same way, that they're evaluated on the competencies and skills needed for the role, and to reduce bias. And so, what our firm does is we create what's called an interview guide. So, it lays out the different interview panels, who are the different people interviewing the candidate, and then what are their focus areas in terms of competency. So let's say you want one panel to really dig into their team management experience. And so in the interview guide, it would lay out questions that interview panel would ask around team management. So laying out the questions that the interviewers will ask. I usually include how much time they have in each interview panel. So you want to start off with introductions, you want to have time for questions, and then you always want to allow time for Q&A for the candidate to ask questions at the end. So it's just very important to have this structured interview guide to ensure that it is a fair and equitable interview process.
I love that. And I do think that for our firms, I think one of the things that we like to do is just just take the hard rocks off the road for our clients, and building those guides, building exemplars for them to use so that they can really turnkey and have a really great process. Because it's not just the process that's building for the employer. We also want the candidate to have a really great experience in the process as well. One thing that comes up with the interviewing process is whether or not a candidate and an employer should have a performance task, some appraisal to really understand whether or not someone meets the core competencies of the work. If you want someone to demonstrate, let's say it's a job in finance, and you want someone to really be able to demonstrate their ability to manage, revenue, or look at a profit and loss statement and really be able to talk about it. Or if you're looking for a candidate who's going for a leadership position, and you really want to understand how might they work in a leadership context, managing a staff conflict within the organization. Giving performance tasks is a really good way up front in the interview process to really understand whether a candidate actually meets those core competencies. And one of the things that I found and what we do at LER Consultants and Advisors is that we actually give the performance task, but we actually have a performance task interview. And one of the reasons why we do the performance task interview is because a candidate can just give the answers to the questions. The interview allows you to really see and understand how that candidate is thinking. Are they strategic? Are they thoughtful in terms of their approach? Did they really go back and can they back up with what it is that they are presenting to the organization in a way that's going to help give some assurance and clarity to the hiring manager or the team members that are involved in that interview process? So I definitely would say performance tasks are great as a way to really assess how someone's doing. Now, on the performance task, I think that there's been a little controversy over time about, the length of the performance task. It should not be something that's going to take someone days to complete. And an employer should be really thoughtful about the time in which they allocate, given that the person who's the candidate is balancing their own personal job as well as life. And so we really try to really incorporate a performance task that's going to really assess those things and be able to bring that candidate in and ask them and really invite them to share their thinking about the task at hand.
I completely agree with that, Leslie. I really try to push my clients to be thoughtful about how much time a candidate has to invest in a performance exercise. There are some firms that actually compensate candidates for preparing a performance task. That's something that employers should definitely consider. But a performance exercise is a good way to really assess a candidate's ability to perform a real life scenario that's happening in your organization.
So far, we've talked about building those early connections through a get to know you conversation or an initial coffee chat. We've talked about putting together an interview guide to help the internal teams to be able to assess the candidates and really be able to look at different types of questions that are going to really point to those core competencies. And then we just talked about the performance task. Are there other things that I want to think about as an employer of really making sure that I don't miss out on in the interview process?
Absolutely. One of the things is even when you're thinking about who to involve in the interview process, you want to make that process inclusive. So you want to involve different stakeholders across the organization, different levels, including the team that they will be managing. That can be via a team meet and greet, or you can actually include some team members in the interview process. So that's one thing I would point out. Another thing is reference checks. It's very important to talk to former employers, both the former manager as well as direct reports, to get feedback and really see if you're hearing some of the same things from the references that the candidate has talked about throughout the interview process. So what were some of their major accomplishments? How do they operate under stress? Asking former employers about the competencies that you are evaluating those candidates on. So you want to have, again, some very structured questions that you're asking the references, and you want to ask those same questions to each reference, and then make sure that you are evaluating that candidate based on not only just the interview and the performance exercise, but also the references.
I love that. And I really, I try to completely go against having someone make an offer without a reference check. You just don't have the opportunity to see the candidate through the eyes of another person. And I think that is what is really critical. And being able to do that, I think, is really helpful. The other thing that I would say is with the references, being able to take the information that you get from the references. I tend to ask for references 2 people that managed the person in their role, 2 people who they managed if it was a leadership role, and then 2 peers. That way you get to see how it is that they manage up to their supervisor, how they manage other people in the context of that, and then how they get along and have relationships with their peers, which I think is just super helpful. But then I think one thing for an employer to take that feedback and really go back to the candidate and ask questions, really get to know the person. I think an interview process is really an opportunity from start to end before an offer is made to really get to know a candidate. I don't think the process should be so drawn out and protracted that the candidate gets disinterested over time. But if you can move it forward and really make sure that you're asking all the upfront questions as you're really trying to build a relationship with that candidate, I think it can be just so helpful, especially as a person is, if they get an offer and they're actually invited into the organization, they have a chance, you know them really well, and you can help use what you learned in the interview process to help guide and build what I'd like to think is the next step, which is really getting to the offer and onboarding. Deronda, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, before I answer that, there are 2 things I want to go back to. As part of that interview guide, one of the things that you need in order to get feedback from all the interviewers is a scorecard. So you want to have a rubric in terms of how those interviewers are evaluating the candidates. Again, you want that to be consistent. So you want to have a rubric laid out. You want to make sure that you are reducing bias. You don't want someone approving a candidate or voting for a candidate because they like them. You want very specific ratings on the competencies that you are evaluating them on in that interview guide. So that's one thing. And then Leslie, you mentioned that you want to make sure that you are moving the process along. I just want to just echo that. It is so critical to just have timely and transparent communications with your candidates. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen searches break down because there was a lack of communication. The candidate didn't hear from the organization,
Right.
or the organization had a very long interview process and people got other offers. And so I think that's very, very critical. And I'm sorry, Leslie, what was the last point you asked me about? Because I wanted to make sure
About onboarding, but can I make a point to what something you just said, which is I definitely think, and particularly if you're a small organization and you don't have like a big HR team working behind you, you can definitely hire either Deronda or I, or reach out to us and we can help provide the capacity. But the one thing that I think it's important that you don't miss is just mapping out the process. What are the steps, and mapping them out and making sure you're on track internal in your organization so that you know, here's what I need to do and here are the next steps, so that you don't lose track of that interview process and you're able to work with the candidate and really tee them up for what's going to come down the road. But I want to make sure that we talk about onboarding before we conclude for today.
Absolutely. It is critical to set your new hire up for success to have an onboarding plan. So how are you going to bring them into the organization to give them an opportunity to learn everything that they need to learn about the organization, about their role, about the team they're managing, as well as giving them an opportunity to meet with all the key stakeholders in the organization that they'll be working with, to build those relationships and to really understand as much as they can to set them up for success. That onboarding plan also should include clear goals. So we could do a whole nother session on that, but I'll leave it at that for now.
Well, the one thing I want to say is that I would think of onboarding even before the offer, right? So I think that really being able to, when you're mapping out your plan as an employer, thinking about what is it that I want this person to know and how am I going to set them up for success when they get the job? Because I'm going to make an offer. I meet a candidate. I've gone through all the stages, right? and then I have this candidate I want to make an offer to. I make an offer, and I hope that they accept the offer. And there are definitely some tools of the trade to make sure that you don't just put all your eggs in one basket, because things come up in interview processes. But if you make an offer to a candidate, you have that offer that's out there. The offer should be very specific, very detailed, listing all of the compensation, listing all of the roles and responsibilities and everything that the candidate is going to say yes to. And once they say yes in your organization, you're celebrating that candidate. You're putting a bow on the interview process by essentially really welcoming them into your organization by having that onboarding plan that you've really predetermined before that offer was even made. So they know the start date. They know who are the people on the team that they need to know. They know what are the critical things that I need to get done in the next 90 days. They know who are the people that are going to help provide resources internal and external to the organization, so that can be really helpful. So anything we forgot, Deronda? I know there's
I think we've covered it.
So many things, so many things in this process. But the thing that I'll say is interviewing a candidate is one of the most important, critical aspects of being able to go through the talent development process. And I think, both of our firms, we do this time and time again. We work with our clients and employers across the country to do this work and really take a little bit of the mystery out of it. Because when you have a great process, you have a happy candidate in the end.
Absolutely.
When you tell a candidate you didn't get the job, you still want them to feel great about the organization, because they will know that maybe I'll apply again. Maybe this is an organization that I keep on my radar just in case something happens. So when we do those things, they're great. So we just want to thank you for listening today on interview processes. And this work, what we've done with America Achieves is we've actually helped organizations build a talent process for interviewing. Many of the organizations we've had a chance to work with, they didn't have a process in place.
Absolutely.
They really would get a resume in, bring the people in for an interview, and we've really helped to take time to help build it out. And we look forward to doing that with our additional clients. So don't forget the early connection. Don't forget creating an interview guide. Don't forget having a performance task and the performance task interview. Also, remember to make sure that it's an inclusive process, include stakeholders. You don't want a candidate to come in the organization and just feel like they're happening to the organization. You want the staff in the organization to really embrace them. And please, it is a no-no not to do a reference check. Make sure you're talking to people who've worked with this person, who have experience with this person. In many organizations, it's reference checks and also other checks to make sure that the candidate, has the credentials coming into the organization. That is a very key component to making sure you're able to really secure your organization. And then scorecarding, removing bias out of the process is just really important, as well as that onboarding plan that's going to really help set that candidate up for success and help your organization win. So thank you for taking time today to talk about an interview process. There's a lot of pieces to this. We'd be happy to discuss this with you more. Feel free to reach out to us. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
I want to thank you so much for joining us today, and hope you will take time to review the other segment in this series about sourcing, recruiting, hiring, and retaining diverse, high-quality talent. We are excited to have partnered with America Achieves in this collective impact talent initiative, helping inclusive, place-based regional coalitions from across the country to meet their talent needs. If you'd like to connect with us individually, feel free to reach out at LER Consultants and Advisors at leslie@lerconsultants.org. Or if you want to reach out to my colleague, Deronda, feel free to reach out to her at dwilliams@dgwcg.com. Also, you can learn more about the Collective Talent Impact Talent Initiative by going to catalyzeblog.americaachieves.org/talent_initiative or email catalyze@americaachieves.org. Thank you for joining us today.